Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the first season of our podcast hosted by SAE-VIT. I'm your host, Ansh Jain, along with my friends Hemant
Hi guys, I'm Hemant.
and Ruheen.
Hi everyone, I'm Roheen.
Today's topic is Air India's comeback to the aviation sector. So, Hemant, what do you think about today's topic?
So today's topic is related to aviation, and me personally, I'm very interested in aviation. That is one of the biggest reasons why I chose this. And Air India is the oldest in India, and it was one of the most successful, and it has a really good story to it. So that is the
Yes, that's true. Air India was founded in 1932 by J.R.D. Tata. So, Ruheen, there's this question like it was founded before our independence era. So, how did the Britishers affected this airline? How did they affected the start of one of the biggest airlines that ever existed?
Okay, so what basically happened was that J.R.D. Tata, the pioneer of Indian aviation, he was the first person in India to get a pilot's license. And what his vision for the country was that he wanted to make aviation available to the common people of India. He wanted each and every Indian citizen to have a flying experience. To start Air India, he faced a lot of difficulties because at the time he needed permissions from the British government. He obviously needed their money and permissions for carrying out flying operations. The Britishers did not have the same vision as J.R.D. Tata. They weren't ready to fund the company at its initial early stages of development. So basically, after several rounds of negotiation, what happened was J.R.D. Tata said that, okay, as long as you give us permissions to carry out our flying operations, we don't need your money, we'll find a way to fund ourselves.
So on from that, how about we talk more about the history and the origin of this airlines? Anyone interested?
So, as Ruheen just said, the Britishers were making it difficult for J.R.D. Tata to start it, and permissions were not getting. So, J.R.D. Tata said that he will start with his own funds, just give me the permissions. So, after the Britishers gave the permissions, and Tata's finally started it with the first flight being the inaugural flight in which J.R.D. Tata himself flew, and it started from Karachi to Bombay, which is Mumbai now, and then from there it flew to Madras.
Interesting fact, the first plane that Tata himself flew, the name of it is Haviland Pasmath, and it is very, like, the reason why it's interesting is because, usually we Indians conventionally name stuff in an Indian way, and it being the first flight named in such a foreign way, it's kind of intriguing to think about.
Okay, so after the inception of the airlines, J.R.D. Tata was such an amazing visionary that he himself used to take most of the flights, and he worked so hard on that particular airlines that it reached to a level that it was internationally recognized as one of the best airlines at that time. And it had great customer service. In fact, when Singapore Airlines wanted to start, then the owner at the time, I don't remember the name exactly, but the owner suggested that they come to India, they fly Air India, and just see how well the cabin crew works and how good the management is. So it was internationally recognized, and at that time when India had just become independent, it was a great deal.
That was a very amazing thing that you told us, Roheen, because honestly, it's very difficult to start something new in tough situations, or situations like no independence. But he did it, and which was a driving force for a lot of things, and including the fact that it still has a major impact on the country right now. The determination and the focus with which he did it back then is something to be marveled at.
So after World War II ended and the early 1950s came, so in 1953 the government decided to nationalize Air India. So before that, it was named Tata Airlines, but the government renamed it to Air India, and after that, its services, its and the airlines developed as a whole. So in 1960, the Air India became the first ever Asian airline to have a jet aircraft, the Boeing 707, which they name as Gauri Shankar, and it was a remarkable achievement feat.
So the decision of privatizing, the most important airlines at the time was not received well by everyone, especially JRD Tata. The decision was basically made by Jawaharlal Nehru and his cabinet of ministers, and JRD Tata opposed this obviously because Tata Airlines was his baby. He did not want to just give it off to the government. And he also said this in a bunch of letters that he had written to Jawaharlal Nehru, that as long as I am working as the chairman of the airlines, I am giving my blood, sweat, and tears to this airline, and its reputation would go down, its services, its customer service would deteriorate later on if it's under the government. Because, after being
Yeah, so as you were saying, the ministers, they didn't really have enough knowledge to handle such a major thing, because nobody had really known such a thing in India before. It was never there before. So the data was insufficient, and they were very bad at managing it.
So after much deliberation, what basically happened was that Tata Airlines became Air India, JRD Tata was removed as its chairman, and now it was handled by the government.
Adding to the crowns of achievement that Air India has achieved, so in 2019, Air India became the first ever commercial flight to charter a plane to the icy continent of Antarctica, where it flew a bunch of scientists to conduct research experiments. So it was a remarkable feat for Air India to achieve, because none of the airlines that exist to this date have made a commercial flight to Antarctica to such like cold climate and conditions that are not very suitable for landing a commercial flight.
Another interesting fact, the plane in question, A0173, the reason why it's so impressive is it traveled over 9,000 miles in only like 14 hours. Well, you might feel like that is not that short or not that impressive, but the reason why it's so cool is traveling for that long without refueling even at one point in that speed is very difficult.
Yeah, the flight that he's talking about is the longest non-stop flight in history. It was from Delhi to San Francisco, and it covered approximately 9,800 miles, and it beat the previous record by 78 miles. And basically, it was one of the most amazing feat that it took, because it was under COVID pandemic that Air India chartered that plane, and it flew directly from Delhi to San Francisco without any gaps, without any refueling. After all the achievements of Air India, the struggles began as Air India started to decline a lot, and slowly the profit margins declined
and then they had to go through a lot of hardship, and we're back again. They're already on the rise, and right now they've been working on their losses, and they've set up their main hub in Delhi with around 6 or 7, if I'm not wrong, primary and secondary hubs in Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad, and so on. Yeah.
So what we are basically trying to say is that it started with nothing. The company started from nothing, reached its peak. It became an absolute international success. And then what happened that at one point they were basically non-existent, and now they're trying to revive themselves again. So
yeah, that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. So after nationalization happened, and globalization started in the 90s. So all these airlines like Emirates, Etihad, and Indigo, they all started to compete with Air India. So basically, they started to reduce the price more and more, which made fierce competition for Air India, and Air India actually buys all its fleet. Okay, so Air India has a massive fleet, and with aging aircrafts and high maintenance of fuel cost for their staff members, for their crew members, when the passengers became declining. So basically, they went into total losses, and it was very hard to compete with these fierce airline giants because they were not able to keep up with them. And in aviation industry, it's very competitive out there because if you are a customer, you want to go for the cheapest and the best flight available.
Yeah, interesting fact again. They invested 44 billion rupees into the fleet that you were talking about. And after that, ever since the prices started dropping of the other, airlines, it became much more difficult for them to even maintain the balance in between their profit and loss because of the strikes by the crew members and the pilots, everyone. So yeah, that was a big hit, and because of which, in the end, since the revenue that they were generating was not matching up, they started going into their own loss.
Speaking about Air India, basically they also have a lot of assets like land holdings and stuff. So basically they possess 3,000 domestic parking spots across the country, and over 1,800 international parking spots are reserved for Air India internationally. So basically they have had a massive fleet once, and basically in the maintenance and stuff, before a flight is flown, we have to do a lot of checks. Basically a lot of inspection has to go, and with an aging aircraft, it takes more maintenance than it gives profit. So slowly and slowly, if you are not keeping up with modernizing the fleet, it will start decreasing, and for modernizing you need funds, and if you are not having funds, if you are not making profit, then how will you modernize? So that is what was happening to Air India.
Talking about numbers, there was a point where they were generating 8,000 crore rupees of loss every single year, and then they acquire, like Hemant mentioned, they acquire a large fleet of 44 billion rupees. You know, a company is already in loss, then they invest so much more in newer aircrafts. So that was not a very good management decision, I would say. There was also why pilots and the aircrew was continuously on strike. That reduced, their flights weren't taking place. There was management problem. So there was no revenue being generated and just continuous losses.
So basically, an interesting fact with the Air India's declining capacity, the economists, like the foreign economists, also got intrigued by this, because Air India was making so much losses, but still it was like holding it in place. It was not like getting bankrupted or anything. So basically a lot of like ideas came on what we should do. So there was this interesting idea in which they talked about like giving equity to all the employees of Air India. So basically when your company is getting on a decline, so if you give equity to your employees itself, so they will have a, what do you call, a part in
interest.
They'll have a stake in the.
they have the stake in the flight, so they will like work harder, they will also like stay with the airlines. So that was an interesting concept, and basically what happened, the chairperson of Air India also like did a lot of hard work. He was also a very, what do you call, out of the box thinker. So basically from, just as Ruin said, around 8,000 crore rupees of losses every year. So in the feasible year of 2016, they finally made a profit of 1 billion rupees. After getting so much debt, everyone will think this company is going to get bankrupt, but even then it can like rise higher, it can still come back. So that was an interesting thing about its comeback.
So a significant portion of Air India's revenue was not even going to maintaining the flights. It was just going off to pay off the debts that it was in. So because of that, the reputation of the airlines itself fell all across the country, because if you're not even able to maintain your planes, then what is the point of taking a plane when you can't have the guarantee that you'll be reached safely or dropped off safely in your destination? So yeah.
Another idea that the airline had to, revive themselves was to introduce newer international air routes and increase the number of flights that will be on those routes. But what happened was that this idea impacted them in a negative way. The international routes that they had introduced turned out to be loss generating and, just creating a debt trap position for the airlines now.
So basically, it was at one point people were very angry because it was taxpayers' money that was going in the losses every day. At one point, Air India was making 30 crore rupees of losses every day. So people were a lot angry that they are using taxpayers' money and they are incurring losses, and the airline is just failing. So why doesn't the government just shut it down?
Oh, also, it's not 30,000 crores every day, it's in the decade.
No, 30 crores I said.
Okay.
30 crores every day.
That was my fault. Okay. Yeah, so on that topic, obviously, thinking about it, right? Why would you be satisfied if the airlines that is reputed in the entire country was falling off so badly, and you are the person who's paying money for it? Like, obviously, you're gonna be somehow responsible for it, and if it's not performing well, you would not be satisfied, right? In general.
But, considering that, okay, what I am one of the investors, I'm a stakeholder in the company, but then I fly Air India, and at that time, the services were so bad that, people were complaining about the food, the customer service, the timing. You did not even know that if I am flying Air India, there's a very good possibility that I'll reach 2 hours later than my scheduled arrival time.
Makes sense.
And at the time, obviously, there were other airlines emerging. There was Indigo, there's Vistara, there's
Etihad.
SpiceJet. At the time, there was Kingfisher. All these airlines were giving me better services. So why would I opt for Air India? Even though I'm a stakeholder, I would want a better flying experience.
Yeah, exactly. That's what. Yeah, and because of that, right, this created a lot of turmoil, which ultimately led to its decline. And there are more reasons.
Basically, the most important reason of its fall was it was not able to manage its air routes very efficiently. So basically, when the market was open for the other airlines to jump in, so Etihad and Emirates all took all the Middle Eastern routes. So all the foreign route, the airlines will make the most profit when it's traveling internationally. So all its international routes just got clogged by all these airlines jumping in, and basically when all these routes are gone, their airplanes are just standing, and you still have to maintain them. You still have to give salary to their crews, their pilots. You still have to fuel them. You still have to inspect them. You still have to go for all the maintenance checks. So it's basically just adding on to the losses day by day.
Yeah, that's true.
Interesting fact, at the time after Jet Airways, I believe, Air India was one of the highest paying airlines for its pilots and its air crew. So yes, people wanted to work there, but then, the amount of money that they were paying their employees was just hurting the company.
Yeah, so in the end, they had to reduce that.
Yeah.
And they did, which affected the quality of pilots who were working there, because of which the reputation fell even worse. Because the pilots, main reason why you board a plane is for the piloting and how well they do it. Piloting, my bad. And how well they do it. So if that itself is of lackluster quality, you would not be interested even in choosing that aircraft. So that is the reason. That is another reason why people started losing interest in airlines, in Air India. So on that topic, did you guys know that there was this flight, the flight which we were talking about before, AI-173, one of its most prestigious flights? It almost crashed because of one of its engines almost failing. Well, it had 216 passengers with 16 crew, and luckily it didn't crash because it was diverted to Russia. But yeah, it almost crashed. So that was a little scary.
So, what all basically stopped working? Obviously the engine failed.
Yeah,
but
so as far as I know, I think only one of the engines failed. But then they realized that midway, luckily, or unluckily should I say, and so they were trying to support the passengers while this was happening. You know, all the stay calm, we're gonna land you and all that, and it wasn't that major of a disturbance, but you know, you can still feel the turbulence in the flight, as well as the problematic passengers, you know, who start complaining.
I mean, if the passengers know our flight is getting diverted, or if they like think the worst,
forget diverted, they thought they were gonna get crashed.
Yeah. So like controlling 216 people, only 16 crew members is really hard.
And all 16 won't even be involved.
Like some of them have to like assist
So
and in 216 people, some will be like medical attention, or some will be like they will get rowdy and stuff. They will think, oh, what is happening?
Or there are just people who panic.
Exactly.
In times like this, when we know that we're in a situation where nothing can be done, people panic and they want somebody. They want somebody to help them out. But you know, it's like everyone is facing the same situation.
Problem,
And basically, the pilots can't just come and help you. Oh, we are not going to crash. They have to like save you first, right?
I mean, the pilots themselves are confused, like what is going to happen right now.
They are trying to do their best to land it and save their lives.
They landed, and after that also, all they released in press, as far as I know, is there was a faulty engine which they realized midway, and they were able to land in Russia, and none of them got injured, so it's fine. So yeah, that's about that one.
Honestly, this is not just like, you know, this is not the only instant of Air India's flight having a faulty instrument or faulty engine in this scenario. There was another flight, the AI-101, that was supposed to fly from Delhi to New York, and the route was Delhi, Mumbai, Beirut, Geneva, and then New York. What happened was that the flight had 357 people, which included 15 aircrew members, if I'm not wrong. And because it was a 14-hour long flight, there were 4 pilots. And the 4 pilots were informed earlier, like when the pre-flight testing was going on, that the APU was not working. They came to a consensus mutually that fine, it's not that big of a deal, and we'll still carry on. What happened was that 1 hour into the flight, they realized that there were multiple faulty instruments in the aircraft. So, like not just the APU, but then altimeter, which is basically telling the pilots how high they are, what their altitude is basically, that stopped working. And I think after...
So were they still able to maintain the altitude, or did they go past the recommended limit?
They don't know, because...
I mean, basically it's very cause on different altitudes, different planes are flying.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if they increase 1,000, they can just crash to another plane.
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to say.
The thing is that they still reached New York somehow. They made 2 attempts to land because so everything during that flight was just not in their favor. The weather conditions were so bad that the pilots were basically flying blind. Their instruments one by one stopped.
They were already flying blind when they realized their plane wasn't working, but okay.
The instruments weren't working, the radio wasn't working. They made the first attempt to land, they weren't able to analyze, they weren't able to align the nose of the aircraft to the center of the runway. So, and obviously it was a 14-hour flight, so, you know, the amount of fuel that the aircraft needed and the amount of fuel that they had already used in order to land once and just flying blind in the air. If they wouldn't have made the landing the second time, it was either crashing or obviously landing successfully. So the 4 pilots used whatever knowledge they had, used their experience, and they did land successfully.
So basically, out of all this, we understood that even though Air India has so many faulty planes, they still land successfully.
It's basically because of the experience these pilots have, all these hundreds of hours of flying experience that these guys possess. they are able to like handle the toughest situations.
Yeah.
But
makes
then,
sense.
even though they were able to handle this situation, it should not have come.
Exactly.
Like pre-flight testing is very important. When that was taking place, how did they not realize that so many of their instruments were faulty? Like, and it's a 14-hour flight. It's not even a new route. It was, one of their normal longer routes that used to take place at the time. So just having faulty aircraft was not acceptable. It's still not acceptable. How can I, as a passenger, I would not want to travel in an airlines that I know that the aircrafts don't work.
See, going back to the point where the fall of Air India, this is again the very visible reason, because everywhere it was like this almost. This is one of the major reasons that we've seen. Maybe in the other aircrafts there were a lot of incidents where some small instruments weren't working, but it was still manageable without those instruments, and they were just covered up because of the reputation in question. We might not ever know about this, but yeah, that also might have happened, which, a citizen like me would think in this way. It might not actually have happened, but I would think in this way because of so many negative outlooks that Air India was giving to us. So because of that, its stock prices also fell down. It was very high. And then right now it's like 10 to 12% of its initial peak, which is kind of sad because, being at that peak where Air India was the only airlines in India to a point where you can't even rely on it.
I mean, not even the only airlines. Basically, other airlines come to think of Air India as a role model, see how their model is working, so we'll incorporate it as our airlines.
Makes sense.
So basically, it became as a as a top airline on which other airlines aspire to become.
Yeah.
And from there, it fell to so much that basically it wasn't even a competition to them.
Yeah, and as previously one of our board members, Param Bhaiya, he was telling us about how Indigo uses shorter routes because of its more efficient planes, and they couldn't Air India couldn't invest in better planes because of which they had to take pit stops everywhere to fuel up and then continue, or they had to change flights. The passengers had to change flights, which was obviously nobody would want to do that. It's just extra hassle. So yeah, that was also a problem.
Speaking on Indigo and Air India, so basically what Indigo used to do, they used to lease the flights. They didn't used to buy them, because when you buy the flight, fleet when it is aged beyond its working capacity,
It's
so
going
you
to
have
be costlier.
It's going to be very costly to maintain it and stuff. But Indigo's model works perfectly with that. You have leased the aircraft, use it as much as you can, and when it's gone, you don't have to keep it as a just stuff, or you have to just maintain it for years.
And then Air India was taking longer routes, which meant that it required more fuel, again adding expenses for the airlines.
I mean, not just expenses. Like, suppose I am a passenger. I am going, so I want the least amount of time taken, right? Why would anyone want to sit 1 hour extra in a flight?
Makes
It's
sense.
boring, just sitting there.
Yeah, it is
sitting
very
in a ventilator.
Nobody has the time basically to just extend their air travel.
more than boring.
I mean,
my long legs, right? In economy class, it's very difficult, man. I'm telling you. Yeah, it's difficult.
I mean, air travel is supposed to be, it's famous because of its low time it takes.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
people will just take other modes of transport. So it should be less time capacity.
True. Yeah, so continuing on the topic, we were talking about how Air India has so many problems in its management and how it's functioning, but we weren't talking about its effects on the country and the citizens as well as the passengers, because such a drastic fall of of one of the best airlines at that time, not only in India, all over. Because of its reputation, because it being a face for India, such a drastic fall should obviously have some implications. And what do you guys think about those implications?
First and foremost, I think that there was a huge shift as to how Indian citizens and the world, in fact, saw Indian aviation. So initially, when Indian aviation was mentioned, it was just Air India. And now, I just want to mention that Maharaja is Air India's mascot, and all of the advertisements that I saw growing up of Maharaja and it being just printed everywhere, and then there was this huge shift as to I never saw it anymore. I saw other aircrafts, like other airlines, and Air India was not worth mentioning anymore.
On that point, right, when you said that it's not visible anymore, yeah, actually, I wasn't that interested in airlines before. So, like before, meaning like 2 years before, prior to this. So at that point, I didn't know what Maharaja was. Like, there was a time where everyone knew what Maharaja was, even without knowing what a flight is. So that's how popular it was. And now fall into such a state is actually very sad to see. And also, touching another point, how we were talking about the stock prices falling, the percentage of loss increasing. That is not only going to have an effect on the company or the organization itself, it's going to have an effect on the entire economy, because suppose let's take in our right now example. Suppose Reliance, or Reliance, how people pronounce it.
Reliance.
So Reliance, it's the backbone of the Indian economy. It contributes to so much money. Reliance and Tata alone can shake up the entire economy. If their stocks fall, their entire India's it's like India's bread and butter. So imagine Reliance losing its profit. So that's what happened at that point. So if Reliance, like right now, if Air India, right, if it comes back up, then India's economy will automatically boom. But that is not happening anywhere, because it's gonna happen in the near future because of all the moves that they're making right now. But right now, the situation isn't like that, and it's kind of sad to see.
Basically, what you're trying to say is that even a small hit to their share prices, or any hit that the company takes, just affects the share market by
it's like a stone,
huge.
It's like a stone in the grass, but it's like a meteor in real life. So basically.
Right.
And ending that segment, I think we can move on to the nice parts right now. How Air India is making its comeback and how it's on the right track. Well, hopefully on the right track. And we can make a speculation about what it can possibly do in future.
So basically what happened after Air India's downfall for so many years, the airline was finally privatized in 2022 by the Tatas themselves. So after it was privatized, so Tatas also have their flagship airlines, the Vistara. Funny thing, Vistara is a Sanskrit word with. Okay, so the next part of the podcast we are going to talk about is the rise and the comeback of Air India back to its glory. So what happened in the early 2000s was the government was trying to privatize it back to the companies, because it was actually incurring a lot of debt and it was taxpayers' money that was going to ruin. So they thought to privatize some part of it. So in 2001, the first attempt was made, but actually the government only decided to put a small portion of the stakes to the companies. So no one was interested. It didn't go as planned. They made another attempt at 2006. That also didn't successful. And then the government holded it in 2017, where 76% stake was established. And after that, finally in 2022, Tata finally took over back their company after paying 18,000 crores.
I'll just cut you there. I think it was 8th of October 2021 when Tata's actually got control of the company. Yeah. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so they outbid SpiceJet by 18,000 crore, where SpiceJet only took around 15,000 crore as the bid. So after it finally got privatized, so
after that, right, recently Air India has put an order for 470 aircrafts. And those 470 aircrafts have been split in between Airbus and Boeing, specifically including Airbus A320neo and Boeing 737 MAX. it also has Airbus A350, and if I'm not wrong, both the Boeing 787 and Boeing 777X.
So basically, this order is one of the biggest in aviation history. It expanses a price of around $100 billion, and basically this shows how Air India and the Tatas in general are trying to like revive Air India. And basically, in the feasible year, they have increased their domestic inputs by 92%, and they have last year they flew around 2 crore of passengers. So they are definitely trying to get back on track.
One thing I was just thinking about that, you know, earlier when they had placed such a big order of aircrafts, it didn't turn out so well for them. So I don't quite understand what the new management is thinking as to, you know, placing
About
another
that,
big order.
I think that is the reason why, you know, there is a merger coming up, Vistara merger, which is going to help them in not only getting back their reputation, but also, you know, lowering the load on themselves. You know, like you already have some really good functioning planes, so you can focus on getting better planes while not sacrificing on doing your job as a company.
So basically, what Rohin was also saying, so they did it the same thing in the 90s also. They bought a huge fleet. After some years, the fleet got old. The maintenance costs skyrocketed, and that's why they fell. So they are trying to do it the same thing again. But it's important to do it because they need modern fleets right now. If they don't have modern jet aircraft, so they can't keep up with the other airlines that are going right
But
now.
yeah, your doubt is very valid because it's a very long-term goal. You won't see immediate results.
Yeah, just speculating about it, maybe one of the, you know, decision that I wouldn't say should have taken, but could, like, you know, even consider, is what basically Indigo does. They could have
Lease it.
leased it. Yeah. Anyway.
So basically, 250 Airbus jets and 220 Boeing aircrafts. So spending so much money in the first place is a big investment. So but Tata's it is their home company basically. J.R.D. Tata himself founded it. So they have a lot of trust in it. They have a lot of, let's say, personal connection to this. So they want to increase it at a good pace. And right now, every 18 months, they are getting a new jet aircraft from Boeing and Airbus. And by next year they will also get 30. Also, one thing I have to add, Rohin was saying, this Indigo leases aircraft. So Boeing is also trying to incorporate this. They have recently merged it with this Airbus. So they have tried to lease 30 aircraft from Airbus. 25 of them are A350s, and the other 5 are A320 neos, if I'm not wrong. So basically, what happened previously was also, if they have a massive fleet, it will be a lot of maintenance costs and stuff. So they are trying to incorporate leasing new aircrafts too in this and buying. So they are going on a hybrid space, as I can say.
You mentioned about Vistara and the Air India merger. So how long, in the future, is it going to happen in 1 year, or what is the timeline that we are looking at here?
So basically, they have started with the legal procedure and stuff for it. I think if everything goes as planned, they will do it by mid-September in 2025. Okay.
2024.
2025. It's going it will be till 2025. They are waiting. They're waiting for the funds and stuff. As soon as every procedure is done, the government gives them permissions and stuff. So they will do it, and Singapore Airlines will also get a 25% stake in Air India.
Yeah, that's kind of. Do you guys have any idea why Singapore is getting a stake in this?
I personally do not.
Because Singapore is already in collaboration with Air India as Vistara. Tata Airlines already had Vistara with them. So Vistara and Singapore Airlines were already in collaboration for quite many years. So, but right now their main objection to this merger, the Singapore Airlines, is that Air India's fleet is not up to date. They do not possess so many modern features and stuff. So that's why their merger is not progressing so well right now. Also, the merger creates new problems, what happens to the Vistara crews, what happens to Vistara pilots, do they get incorporated in Air India, Like,
Moreover, what happens to the management of Vistara that
Yeah.
has been working towards working with Singapore Airlines? The alliance between, so it's not just a merger between Air India and Vistara anymore, but you just told me that Vistara was already working with Singapore Airlines. So it's kind of a collaboration between three airlines now.
yeah, basically, but this will create a lot of problems too, because the management is like not sure what if their jobs are very secured or not right now. Will the crew members get the same positions they have in Vistara in Air India or not? So there's a lot of let's say doubt about among the crew members and stuff.
Yeah, so talking about the merger between Vistara and Air India, I want to talk about one of the major obstacles for this, and I think it would be, the cultural misalignment, which would include, the job security, the, employees themselves are not satisfied or they're, unsure about how their tenure with this company will be, and they're not sure about how much success it can produce, which is a major issue for them.
Like also the major fact is that both of these companies have different philosophies and different like way of working. So like Vistara and Air India have been working like independent of each other. Okay, Tata Airlines have had Vistara since 1950s. They have been working with Vistara. They have their own organization point of view. But Air India, they just got it back in 22. So now, how will when it merges, what type of philosophy they will take? What type of organization will they take? How will the management be able to like align both of these? So like it should be like both of them are combined. It's a merger, right? It should not be like Air India just ate Vistara or stuff.
Basically, employees from both the airlines will encounter differences in the leadership styles, the communication practices, the norms of the organization, and also, this would, I think, lead to feelings of discomfort and alienation for employees for both the companies. There will be a clash of cultures which might hinder the collaboration, but obviously the management of both the airlines have to come up with a midway solution.
Like basically the management style has to be more like they have to provide the information to the employees. They have to like tell, okay, your job is secured. You will have this position in the company when it will merge finally. Right now they are living in doubt. Okay, what will happen? Should I apply for some different airline? Should I even do I even have job after the merger?
And it's not only about that, right? See, Vistara and Air India, they are two separate beings right now. If they're merged, right, there will be a clash between the employees themselves. So they'll keep comparing between their own. Suppose one person gets, for the same position, they're getting a higher salary than the other brand or the company. Then they will obviously start comparing, and they'll start mocking, and it might lead to internal conflicts between the companies, which cannot be resolved as easily as just we're merging now just because of good management. They'll have to actually make sure that the transition between two companies and to one company will be very smooth.
The way I look at it is basically not just a merger between two companies, but firstly the dissolution of two existing companies, and the rise of one entirely new company with its own set of philosophies, with its own set of rules, regulations, and obviously the pay structure.
Yeah. So basically, like the merger, whatever it goes, it will go. It has around 1 year left till the merger finally happens. But the main fact is the management has to be of a fact that they treat Air India and Vistara employees as one. They don't have to be biased towards Vistara or India. They have to like perceive a good management style which incorporates both Air India and Vistara as one. So basically, we have been talking about the merger between Vistara and Air India. So let's conclude the fact and let's move on to the next segment, which will be about how Air India has been making its comeback and what kind of measures it has already.
So in conclusion, the Vistara and Air India merger, it poses a lot of challenges as well as it has a lot of benefits to it. So it is going to be a very important change for both the companies as well as a sight to see for them. So yeah, that is about that. Now going back to our initial topic about how Air India is working for coming back in the industry.
And what the current scenario is.
Yes.
Yeah. So now that Vistara and Air India's merger is finally happening, so let's talk about all the comebacks that the Air India is making. So right now they have added 300 new routes between domestic and international flights. They have added 4 new routes from Mumbai to Melbourne, from Kolkata to Bangkok, and they have also like increased the number of flights on their previous routes. Like from Delhi to Bangkok, they have increased from 7 to 14, and from Mumbai to Los Angeles, they have increased from 7 to 14. They are basically increasing their domestic flights, also like creating new international routes. They are trying to expand to new horizons, and basically all the like the vast order that they made, the 470 jet aircrafts. So they are trying to like expand, because if you're buying so much, so you have to expand in the same way, right?
Also, another point, interesting point. This A350, which Air India is taking, it is going to be the first A350 in India, in any Indian airlines. So that's going to be an important change, because this plane in specific will be making or breaking the future of Air India, because that is what it's like, the entire hopes of that company is riding on that one plane.
Yeah, also the H50 is actually the aircraft that the Air India has actually leased from Airbus. The 25 aircrafts that they have leased from Airbus, those are all A350s, and that is actually true. It's India's first A350 aircraft. We'll also be like,
They're expecting to get 6 of the A350s by this May, and it won't only elevate the passenger experience, but also open up new routes and opportunities for further expansion.
Yeah. So we can talk about right now. We can talk about the current aircrafts that Air India has, and they include a lot of variety. But namely, the A319, A320, A320 Neo, A321, A320 Neo, B7878, B777-200 LR, B777-300 ER, and it
So
would.
they're adding 400 weekly flights to its domestic and international route network, and that's the vision for March 2024. And
also the airline announced that Mumbai will see the addition of flights to San Francisco, as well as the New York's international airports like Newark Liberty and John F. Kennedy. Also, like Bangalore is getting a 3 into weekly service to San Francisco. Also, like to talk about India's aviation sector, so it's growing at a rapid pace. We are the most populated country in the world, and basically every year we are getting so much more tourists. We are getting more people who can afford aircrafts like air travel, and basically India will be the growing aviation economy in the future. So Air India is trying to keep up with the pace, and which can be seen from their like historic order of more than 400 jets. And
so we've mentioned a lot about what they're currently doing to revive themselves. What I am thinking about is that what will aviation in future look like for India? Because Jet
Before
Airways-
going to that one point, I just wanted to add this point, right, about the money involved. The money involved for
just 470 jets.
not the 470 jets in general, because they have a huge amount of it.
Yeah.
It has just been piling up.
Yeah.
And recently in 2016, it was the first time when they actually turned a profit.
Yeah.
So before that, it was just losses.
Yeah.
So as you were talking about before in the first segment and second segments, you know how they converted their stocks into equity,
Yeah.
which reduced over 100 billion rupees into, from their debt into equity, which gives banks a lot more say in their functioning in general, and how they can operate from now on will be regulated by the banks. And now going back to Ruheen, your point.
What I was basically wondering was that aviation in India, what's it going to look like in the future? Because Jet Airways, as we know, is like currently not existing. We don't have Kingfisher anymore. Vistara is being inculcated into Air India, and Indio is also, not doing very well right now. So are we going to, will history repeat itself where Air India is the face of aviation? Is it the only airline that will be, flourishing? So
I think, right, in this situation, see, Air India was a role model for a lot of airlines in India. So if Air India replenishes itself, and in the current generation where, the social media is thriving, the access to knowledge itself and, how everything works is thriving. So based on that, what I will predict is if Air India can, recoup from all its damage and make a substantial profit, or at least show that it can function again well, other airlines will try to adopt this kind of, method that Air India took, and it will actually help other airlines as well. For example, Indigo.
But right now the competition is very high between Indigo and Air India, because Indigo, it is the basically the majority portion of all the aircraft that are flowing in India right now. It's all Indigo. If you go to an airport, you can see basically Indigo has 15 counters. Air India will only have 1, 2, Vistara 1.
Indigo is basically dominating the industry right now.
Yeah, that's what.
You go to an airport, you just see the aircraft there. It will be 90% Indigo. You may see 1 or 2 Air India, but Indigo is the major thing right now.
Yeah. So, in conclusion to the podcast or the discussion that we had today, in the first segment, we talked about how Air India was initially started by Tata and how he brought it to its peak. And then slowly we talked about the fall and then its signs and hopes of comeback that it's showing right now. Thinking about all this, for the future, we can just expect it to actually perform and outperform what it did before to put India back on the track where it was one of the leading countries in terms of airlines. So yeah, that is what I would say. Any words, Ansh?
So basically the entire stuff that we talked about, basically the fall, the comeback that the Air India is making, it's one of a story. Basically, even economists are confused, how did a company from this bankruptcy can go to they made a first profit of $1 billion in 2016. So that's a lot. A company which is going to bankrupt, they will just think, okay, it's going to get bankrupted, it's going to get closed, it's going to get sell off, but still they can make a profit. So it shows the resilience that Air India can show in toughest times.
Okay, so now that you've heard about, the facts about what happened, you've heard us blabbering about our thoughts, and we just want to know what you speculate about Indian aviation and Air India's future in general. So put that out in the comments. We're very excited to know about your views.
So as Rohin said, let us know about your speculation on what you think, whether Air India is going to make a comeback, how is it going to dominate the industry, what is going to happen in the aviation sector next. Leave it in the comment section. Also follow us on our Instagram page, our official SAE, Society of Automotive Engineers, VIT. And
yeah, and thank you guys, and stay tuned for the next session here on SAE-VIT.